Network Entertainment.
Nag-download po kami ng mga image archives na kinolekta po ng Landsat mission starting in 1990. And then, isang problem when we speak about Landsat is isa siyang passive remote sensing products. Marami kang mga clouds na madedetect. So, ang pinakaunang method is you have to construct a cloud-free mosaic of the image. And then, we did that for 1990 all throughout 2020 at a 10-year interval. Minapa namin yung lahat ng forest, yung mga locations ng mga agricultural areas, brushlands, and built-up areas. And through time, nakita namin na lumiliit masyado yung forest at lumalaki masyado yung mga built-up areas situated in this watershed. And then, we use that information as input parameters to analyze kung ano yung nangyayari in terms of flood exposure and landscape fragmentation at the watershed scale.
Sa tuwing nagbabasa kayo ng mga research papers, nagtataka din ba kayo kung paano ito naisipan gawin ng mga researchers? Paano nila na-transform ang idea nila para maging isang actual na research project? Saan sila kumuha ng funding para magawa to? Paano nila nalaman na ang results nila ay pwede na nilang ipasa for publication? Dito, sa Behind the Science podcast, ay kakausapin natin ang ating mga Pinoy scientists para ibahagi hindi lang ang mga resulta ng kanilang pag-aaral, kundi pati na rin ang mga behind the scenes or behind the science stories nito. Simula sa kung paano nila ito naisipan gawin hanggang sa na-publish na nila ito. So this podcast is in partnership with the UP Resilience Institute, the Philippine Agricultural Scientist, the Philippine Journal of Fisheries, and SciEngJ. So ang UP Resilience Institute ay long-time partners na namin dito sa podcast. Nung nagsisimula pa lang kami, nandyan na sila para tumulong sa amin. At para lang sa kaalaman ng lahat, ako ngayon ay isang UPRI Research Fellow. The Philippine Agricultural Scientist is the first international journal in the Philippines and Southeast Asia in the field of agriculture. It is published by the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, College of Agriculture and Food Science. It publishes articles in the fields of tropical agricultural science and related areas including environmental science, food science, engineering, biotechnology, economics, rural sociology, development communication, agroforestry and silviculture, and marine and fishery science. The Philippine Journal of Fisheries is the official publication of the Department of Agriculture, National Fisheries Research and Development Institute. It covers all aspects of fisheries, both in basic and applied sciences, as well as related fields of studies such as capture fisheries, aquaculture, post-harvest technology, marketing and industry, ecology, oceanography, conservation, biotechnology, food safety, socioeconomics, and systematics in freshwater, estuarine, marine, and other identifiable water habitats. SciEngJ, formerly known as the Philippine Science Letters, is the official journal of the Philippine American Academy of Science and Engineering. It covers studies in the natural, physical, mathematical, computational, and social sciences, including those related to agriculture, health, engineering, environment, education, and technology. So kung may paper kayong gustong i-publish at pasok ito sa scope ng mga journals na ito, please consider submitting to one of them. At syempre, importante, take note na hindi kayo pwede mag-submit ng sabay-sabay sa 3 journals na ito. Kasi bawal yon. Dapat sa isang journal muna kayo mag-submit. At ang mga journals na to ay index na rin sa Web of Science, Scopus, ASEAN Citation Index, and sa Imago Journal Ranking. Kaya masisiguro nyo dito ang mataas na standard at mabusisi na review process para masiguro ang high quality papers na pinapublish. So if you're interested in publishing your research in one of these journals, check nyo ang guidelines at ang links ay nasa description. Magandang araw mga kapwa-scientista at welcome sa isa na namang episode ng Behind the Science podcast. Ako si Paul Flores, ang inyong host, and our guest is a science researcher at the University of the Philippines Resilience Institute, where he uses geographic information system and remote sensing methodologies to understand different environmental and social challenges at the landscape scale. At UPRI, he works on several projects that require flood simulations, hazard exposure units, and land cover mapping. He graduated BS Environmental Science and Technology from the University of Science and Technology from Southern Philippines and MS Environmental Science from University of San Carlos. During his stint as a graduate researcher, he worked on time series satellite imagery analysis of forest cover change across Mindanao. So without further ado, let's all welcome Mr. Gifford J. Agudo.
Hello po, good afternoon po sa lahat.
Ayun, so welcome Ford sa podcast. So bago
Thank you
pala
po,
tayo
sir.
magsimula, no, kung nag-enjoy kayo dito sa podcast at gusto niyo ang ginagawa namin dito, paki-like naman ang episode na ito at mag-subscribe na rin kayo sa mga social media platforms ng Behind the Science Podcast. Makikita nyo kami sa Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast, and Facebook. At paki-rate na rin kami ng 5 stars para mas madami pa tayong maabot na audience. So, ang topic natin ngayon, actually interesting to, no? Titingnan natin yung epekto ng 30 years na pagbabago ng land cover sa Albay. So, yung effect ng land cover sa pagbaha dun sa Albay over 30 years. At recommend ko din yung mga previous episodes namin kasi madami na rin kaming episodes tungkol sa ganitong topic na pagbaha. So, please check. Episode 75, ang naging guest natin ay si Mr. Isaac Bisara. At ang naging topic namin doon ay kung anong magiging epekto ng climate change sa flood risk ng Carigara, Leyte. And episode 43, paki-check nyo rin. Ang guest natin doon ay si Dr. Lea Dasalias. Ang pinag-usapan naman namin ay multi-scale flood modeling sa Marikina Pasig River Basin. So, ayun. The usual, bago natin pag-usapan yung research focus natin for today, kilalanin muna natin si Ford as well as yung naging journey niya as a scientist. Yun. So, Ford, yung unang question namin dito palagi, kailan mo na-realize na gusto mo magtrabaho sa science sector?
Siguro sir, masasabi ko na later in life ko lang po talaga na-realize na gusto kong magtrabaho related sa mga science works. Kasi hindi ko din talaga intention in the first place na magtrabaho related sa mga researches and all that stuff. Kasi growing up, wala akong someone that I look up to na masasabing gusto ko maging scientist. Kasi in our family din kasi, walang person who studied the science and do or conduct research. Growing up, gusto ko lang talagang maging katulad ng aking tatay na maging auto mechanic. Pero siguro yung pinaka leap forward in advancing my career into science is nung natanggap po ako dun sa DOS na scholarship when I was in Cebu back in 2019, I guess. Kasi doon meron din po akong at some point naging inspiration na gusto kong maging katulad niya na nag-aral ng forest and then travel around the world just to pursue and advance science. Parang ganun yung pinaka nakita kong inspiration of why I'm doing this ngayon.
Very common, I think, yun na issue na tayo nung bata tayo, wala tayong parang nilook up na scientist, lalo na Pinoy na scientist. Yung mga nakikilala natin palagi mga yung mga nasa textbooks na mga scientist. Pero pag sinabi mong may kilala ka ba na Pinoy scientist, wala kang immediately na makikilala eh.
Yeah.
So hopefully yung podcast na to as well as yung other mga pages na promoting Pinoy scientists, hopefully in some way or form maka-inspire din siya ng mga next generation ng mga scientists.
Hopefully maging ganun din po talaga yung direction, especially na mas accessible na kasi yung mga channels like this. So I hope yun nga mas magiging inspiration siya for younger generations to pursue careers in science.
Gusto ko lang din pala i-backtrack kasi sabi mo kanina mas na-inspire ka na i-pursue pa yung science nung nasa Cebu ka na. Pero nung nag-college ka, bakit environmental science yung pinili mo na kurso?
Personally hindi ko siya pinili. Parang sinuggest lang siya ng nanay ko na you can take this kasi medyo mahina ako sa math. And then at the same time, hindi ako galingan sa science din. So yung may notion kasi dati na when you speak about courses related to science, wala masyadong mathematics. Pero parang trap pala yun na if you study science, meron ding integration of mathematics later on. So, yun po
Ah.
yung pinaka-reason na ini parang pinush lang ako ng nanay ko na just to pursue this kasi wala masyadong math, parang ganun.
Yan talaga yung mga malalaking misconception sa ano, ibang mga science courses.
Yeah.
Sasabihin nila na walang math daw yung ganitong subject. Nung nag-geology ako, ganun din sinasabi ng ibang mga tao. Wala daw math sa geology. Pero nung pagkapasok mo sa program, madami rin pala. May mga calculus ka din na kailangan
Yeah.
kukunin. Algebra, calculus. Sabi mo kanina, napunta ka sa Cebu tapos natanggap ka for DOST scholarship. After graduating college ba, nag-pursue ka agad ng graduate school dun sa Cebu or nagtrabaho ka muna? Ano yung backstory na after mo mag-graduate ng college, ano yung ginawa mo?
I work for 3 months under a CHED-funded project. Dito lang din sa Cagayan de Oro. But at the same time, tinake ko din yun as opportunity to apply for scholarships. So, simultaneously ginawa ko siya. So, yun po. Hindi ako nag-pursue ng graduate studies directly kasi in between. Although very short period of time lang yung engagement ko with that project. Bali 3 months lang ata.
Pero bakit University of San Carlos yung napili mong puntahan for grad school?
Yung pinaka-reason ko is nag-scout po kasi ako ng mga professors na nagkaroon talaga sila ng studies related sa remote sensing and application ng remote sensing and analysis of deforestation. And then yung unang nakita ko na malapit lang din dito sa Cagayan de Oro is yung University of San Carlos. Meron kasi silang professor doon dati na si Dr. Glenn Martin Green na nag-specialize talaga siya ng remote sensing at meron siyang studies related on deforestation in Madagascar and some portions in Brazil. Meron din sa African continent. So, medyo naengganyo ako about his expertise. And then yun, nag-apply po ako dun sa DOST scholarship. And in hope na maging thesis advisor.
Paano ka na-introduce sa remote sensing?
Mahilig po kasi ako magbasa ng mga different magazines like yung mga geographic magazines na yung mga kulay dilaw. Then nakita ko lang na lumang version siya. Siguro mga 1990s or 1987 yun na article. Na ginamit nila yung LiDAR scanning para mas-scan lang yung mga bundok doon sa Brazil. Para malaman lang nila yung extent ng communities na na-bury and natakpan po ng mga forest. And then doon, mas naengganyo ako to pursue it kasi na-amaze lang po talaga ako sa application na even without going there sa field remotely, ma-analyze mo yung changes of the landscape given na meron tayong sobrang daming dataset that was collected as early as 1970s. So yun, medyo naengganyo ako on that part.
Pero nung college, wala ka pang nagawang mga remote sensing projects nung
Wala.
nung nag-masters ka na?
Yeah,
Ayos.
only the basic stuffs lang na pag-create ng mga study map. Pero in terms of deeper understanding, deeper analysis, wala po.
Pero ang galing na rin ng remote sensing at JS ngayon. Ang daming nagiging
Yeah.
interested sa topics na to. Na pati mga high school students, ito yung
Yeah.
tinitesis nila. Ang galing.
Yes. Pero aside from that, sir, medyo lang. Kung titignan mo yung fabric ng remote sensing at present, medyo sobrang mahirap na siya kasi nag-i-integrate na yung disciplines of computer science wherein you have to use this deep learning, machine learning, and kung titignan mo yung learning curve, sobrang steep. Yun lang din yung pinaka mahirap if ever na you'll take this very seriously as your career.
Can you share din pala ano yung ginawa mong study nung nag-masters ka na dyan sa Cebu?
Yeah. Tinignan ko lang yung yung change dynamics of forest landscapes in the whole island of Mindanao, and at the same time tinignan ko din yung risk of these forest landscapes being deforested in the future. So merong statistical analysis na binary logistics regression model wherein naghanap ako ng different parameters on the existing literature on what influences deforestation, and then use that as input parameters and assimilate it in a binary logistics regression model. And then, yun po, in-apply ko po yun for the entire island of Mindanao.
Nakakatawa, sabi mo kanina, hindi ka ganun kagaling sa math, pero yung remote sensing, ang daming mga mathematical
Ah.
terminologies palagi yung nagagamit.
Yun nga yung surprising.
Hindi ka naman nahirapan aralin yung mga math dun sa sa remote sensing.
Mahirap po, sir. Actually, 2 years na masters, parang most of the time, dinedicate ko talaga sa pagbabasa and then pag-aaral ng mga codes and stuff para magawa ko lang yung thesis ko. Kaya mahirap din talaga.
Anong programming language yung ginagamit mo dito?
Nung kakasimula ko pa lang po ng remote sensing is hindi pa gano'n ka sikat yung mga programming, Meron pang mga softwares na may graphic user interface like
yung
QGIS.
no?
Meron ding INVI. Naabutan ko din yung mga lumang softwares na Erdas Imagine. Pero later on, siguro mga 2021, nagsilabasan na kasi yung mga online na mga trainings all about Google Earth Engine, yung mga JavaScript. At dun, mas inaral ko na yun kasi mas efficient po yung paggawa po ng analysis using it kasi naka-cloud po siya .
Ang bilis nga ng pag-boom nung nung remote sensing, lalo na nung lumabas yung yung Google Earth Engine. Kasi hindi mo na kailangan i-store yung mga mabibigat na files sa computer mo, nasa cloud na lang lahat, wala ka ng problema sa storage.
Usually yun yung yung bottleneck talaga kasi yung isang scene, yung rectangle, siguro mga nasa around 1 gigabyte yon. And then, if we speak about the entire island of Mindanao, siguro nasa more than 10 different scenes. And then you have to take into account the time series analysis na meron kang analysis for 1970s, 80s, 90s. Depende sa'yo. So, yun yung pinaka-bottleneck when I started doing this. Yung binanggit niyo po, sir, na hardware limitations.
Ngayon, nasa UPRI ka na. Paano naman nag-open up yung opportunity to move from University of San Carlos papunta dyan sa UPRI?
Ayun. Before po ako napunta ng UP Resilience Institute, nag-apply po ako as Instructor 1 dito lang din sa Cagayan de Oro. Pero usually kasi pag mga summer breaks, for contract of service, mapuputol po yung nyo, contract. Kasi nga, it's a summer break, walang students na nag-e-enroll. And at the same time, meron po kasing project yung UPRI, yung Safer Universities, yung Safer U, na part po sila ng team na gumagawa po ng mga development plans of the 25 different state universities and colleges. At ito ay pinondohan ng Commission on Higher Education. So, part po ako nung mga bagong researchers that entered UP NOAA Center back in 2022. So, nag-post po sila ng open positions back in 2022, and then I was accepted on May 16, 2022. And we've worked on that project sa 25 different SUCs and conducted simulations and then hazard assessment reports. Parang ganun po yung story why I ended up working here sa UP Resilience Institute.
Tandang-tanda mo pa yung date kung kailan ka nagsimula dyan.
Opo.
Ayun, so since nakwento na ni Ford yung backstory niya, paano siya napunta dyan sa UPRI, I guess pag-usapan naman natin yung research na ginawa nila. So ang title nito ay Land Cover Change and its Associated Impacts on Landscape Fragmentation and Flood Exposure in Kinalia, tama ba?
Kinalia.
Kinalia Watershed, Albay, Philippines. And so Ford, can you explain muna tungkol saan ba yung study na to in one sentence?
Ayun, one sentence. Sige. Tinignan lang po nagkaroon po kami ng time series analysis of land cover change in Kinalia Watershed. Minapa namin yung lahat ng forest, yung mga locations ng mga agricultural areas, brushlands, and built-up areas. And through time, nakita namin na lumiliit masyado yung forest at lumalaki masyado yung mga built-up areas situated in this watershed. And then, we use that information as input parameters to analyze kung ano yung nangyayari in terms of flood exposure and landscape fragmentation at the watershed scale. So, ganun po, sir.
Yung term na land cover, iba siya sa
Mm.
land use, di ba?
Yeah. Sa pagkakaalala ko, yung technical term ata ng land use is kung paano ginagamit yung isang land cover. Let's say, for example, broad classification ng isang forest, if we speak about land cover is only forest. And beneath that, meron kang broadleaf forest, meron kang mga dry forest and some sort of forest types. Pero doon kasi sa mga land use, may mga iba't ibang uses of forest na for, let's say for example, yung mga production areas ng forest, protected areas forest that's used for protecting biodiversity. Parang yun yung deviation nila. Parang land cover change is the natural, and when we speak about how humans use this land cover, yun yung land use.
So, balik kumbaga, kapag tinitingnan mo lang yung satellite image, yung pwede mo lang ma-infer ay yung land cover niya. Hindi mo
Yeah.
necessarily masasabi agad kung saan siya ginagamit. Kailan mong puntahan yung site para mo okay.
Kasi sa remote sensing, nagbe-base lang kasi tayo sa backscatter ng 'di ba, ng mga pixel. Wala tayong information on how we use it. So yun ata yung pinaka-difference.
Yung study niyo na 'to, ano naman ang backstory nito? Bakit niyo ginawa
Ayun.
yung study na 'to?
Sa pagkakaalala ko, sir, hindi ito yung pinaka-primary output of doing the project. Yung intention of why this project was created in the first place is i-analyze yung different types of hazard that exists within the watershed. And then later on, gagamitin siya as input data to create a multi-hazard map. Yung intersection of the different hazards. Kasi wala masyadong nag-aaral ng mga multi-hazard, at least here in the Philippines. Kaya yun yung pinaka-intention. And then later on, gusto din kasi naming malaman yung condition on how the landscape is changing over time. So, dito na pumasok yung idea of why not we'll use this data that we have, and then ibabangga natin siya sa flood hazard maps natin. Titignan din natin yung changes in terms of the fragmentation of the landscape. Yun po.
Bakit itong Kinali A yung napili niyong site to do this study?
Ang pinaka-reason, sir, is etong watershed na ito ay madami na silang experience on the different types of hazards. Kasi if you try to look at this watershed sa isang mapa, on the eastern side, meron kang Mayon Volcano na based sa mga existing literature reading namin, sobrang active siya and it causes a lot of hazards like volcanic hazards. Meron kang lahars flowing at the foothills of this volcano, and then at the same time, it's sitting on the eastern side of the Philippines na daanan po talaga siya ng bagyo. So, may mga FE phenomenons on landslide occurrences. Meron din siyang impacts on flooding events back in 2020. So, yun yung pinaka-reason namin na it gives us the opportunity to study more about multi-hazard and then the accompanying changes in the landscape. So yun po yung rationale behind why we studied this area.
So wala namang parang specific na bagyo na dumaan na nag-trigger sa inyo to do this study.
Yeah.
Ano lang?
Yeah. Basically the multiplicity of hazard occurrence. Yun lang yung I think reason behind.
Yung term na kasi paulit-ulit mo sinasabi yung term na landscape. Anong pinagkaiba nung definition ng landscape naman sa sa land cover?
Yung landscape lang, sir, yung nire-refer ko lang yung buong watershed kasi parang units of analysis lang po siya sa ginagawa naming research. Kasi sa forest fragmentation analysis, meron kang different types of unit analysis na pwede mong silipin eh. Yung landscape, it refers to the entire watershed as our units of analysis.
Ngayon, yung objective nung study nyo, di ba, ay tingnan yung naging epekto nitong land cover change dun sa dun sa pagbaha. So basically, yung methodology na sinabi mo kanina, meron kang land cover mapping and of course may kailangan na flood modeling. So
Yeah.
can you discuss din yung methodology to do this? Siguro unahin muna natin yung land cover mapping. Paano nyo ginawa yung mga land cover maps?
Una sir is nag-download po kami ng mga image archives na kinolekta po ng Landsat mission starting in 1990. And then, isang problem when we speak about Landsat is isa siyang passive remote sensing products. Marami kang mga clouds na madedetect. So, ang pinakaunang method is you have to construct a cloud-free mosaic of the image. And then, we did that for 1990 all throughout 2020 at a 10-year interval. And then, gumawa kami ng isang classification method. I mean, hindi gumawa. Inadapt lang namin yung random forest classifier ng Google Earth Engine. Wherein, nag-develop lang kami ng mga database that basically contains the different land cover types and use that as input to run the classification method. And then we also did that for the entire time period of our analysis. And on the other hand, nagkaroon kami ng two-dimensional flood simulations gamit yung software na ginagamit ng UP NOAA Center. So essentially, meron kaming IFSAR datasets na 10-meter digital terrain model. Then we superimpose the types of soils, the existing land cover, and then the curve number and other parameters that influences the incipient flooding conditions. And of course, ginamit din po namin yung rainfall coming from the Pag-asa. And in this study, we have a series of different scenarios. It's a multi-scenario. Meron din kaming in-account na climate change. Pero yung ginamit lang namin is the baseline 100 year. And then yung term of analyzing the flood exposure is basically you superimpose the land cover map and then the flood hazard map. Tapos, using geoprocessing na intersect, malalaman mo kung tumataas po ba yung exposure rates of these populated areas on flood and other land cover. So, yun po yung method na ginamit namin.
Ay, kanina may nabanggit ka na term na yung Landsat ay passive remote sensing siya.
Mm-mm.
So
Yeah.
can you share din sa audience natin na baka hindi pa familiar sa ganitong terminology sa remote sensing. Ano bang pinagkaiba ng passive sa active remote sensing?
May dalawa po kasing mode of how remote sensing works. Yung broad classification niya is meron yung active and then yung na-mention ko kanina is yung passive. The way passive remote sensing works is nagre-rely lang siya ng illumination properties ng araw. So, at the time of this image was captured, hindi siya nagfa-flash ng own light niya. So, yung bumabalik na anong tawag dito, na mga backscatter out from that is hindi galing dun sa mismong satellite but retrieve coming from the solar energy. Ang problema kasi doon is pag nakaka-encounter siya ng sobrang lalaking particles present in the atmosphere, hindi nakakabalik effectively at nagba-bounce back lang pabalik sa atmosphere. Kaya kung titignan mo, may sobrang laking cloud cover, hindi makaka-penetrate down on the surface of the planet yung mismong light na yun. Kaya medyo when we do remote sensing sa mga tropical countries like Philippines, medyo disadvantage siya. And on the other hand, yung active remote sensing naman, kagaya ng mga LiDAR, magbi-beam siya ng own energy just to capture these different surface properties. So, yun yung pinaka-difference nila, sir.
Parang din pala siya, yung passive remote sensing. Parang kung paano tayo nakakita, yung light tatama sa object, magre-reflect, tapos yun yung nade-detect ng mata natin. Pero yung active, parang in-on mo yung flash ng camera na
parang ganun yung
light.
Properties talaga.
Tapos kanina nabanggit mo from 1990 yung ginamit nyo na satellite images. So, ano yung time period nun? 1990 up to what year yung inanalyze nyo?
Hanggang 2020 po yung dulong period na kinonsider namin for the entire analysis yung sa flood exposure and then landscape fragmentation.
Tapos every year yun, may land cover?
Ay 10-year interval po. Bali from 1990 and then 2000 and then 2010 and then 2020. Medyo mahirap
Okay.
lang po yung annual kasi medyo problematic yung amount of satellite image na cloud-free. Yun yung pinaka-restrictions on why we did not intend to do it. Yung parang annual.
Tsaka ang dami rin ng kailangan i-process pag annual,
Yeah.
no? Saka
Madami din
yung change
talaga.
naman siguro, hindi naman siya ganun ka-drastic palagi na kailangan mo yung annual.
Yeah. Yun din po yung isang factor pala talaga na hindi mo naman masisilip yung changes annually. Kunyari yung forest, siguro may mga special cases na may significant reduction in the amount of forest, pero normally yung timeline na tinitingnan is for 10 years. At least yung sa mga nabasa naming literature.
Bali, 'di ba, dito, so gumawa kayo ng sarili niyong land cover map. So curious ako, wala bang readily available na ng mga land cover maps na para yun na lang yung gamitin niyo to reduce yung workload?
Yun. Meron naman pong mga readily available dito sa atin kasi nagpapublish po yung NAMRIA ng land cover maps at least every 5 years. Ang gusto lang namin is as much as possible ma-detect talaga yung mga original forest extent. Kaya nag-extend kami beyond the available dataset niya. 2010 lang yung for NAMRIA and we wanted to capture the original forest that existed in 1990. So merong readily available pero gusto lang naming masilip talaga yung original land cover.
So kapag gumagawa kayo ng land cover maps, how do you test yung accuracy nung nagawa nyo? Kasi 'di ba, yung ginawa nyo 1990, 2000, 2010, tapos 2020. Hindi naman tayo maka-travel back in time para
Yeah.
tingnan yung nagawa nyong map kung tama siya. So paano nyo tinitingnan yun kung accurate ba yung nagawa nyo?
Ayun. Swerte lang po kami sir kasi meron po kaming database of yung mga point database that reflects what was the land cover back then of that. And then at the same time, meron din po kaming mga topographic maps na nahanap. And then we use that as our information to validate the output of the classification process. And at the same time, ginamit din pala namin yun to train the model itself. Parang hinati lang namin into 7 to 30 partition of those points. And then the 30% was used as reference to conduct the validation method. Meron kaming kinalculate na overall accuracy, kappa coefficient, user's accuracy, and then may isa pang index na ginamit namin. So basically, it's a comparison of those points na ginamit namin and then the output that we generated from the classification process.
Tapos yung classification, 'di ba, may iba-ibang algorithms 'yan kasi 'di ba sa remote sensing may sasabihin ka na dun sa programa na ito ganitong classification siya, tapos ito ganitong classification siya, ito ganitong classification. So yun ngayon yung gagamitin ng software na parang basis niya para i-classify yung buong image mo. Tapos may iba-ibang algorithms to do that. Kanina binanggit mo yung ginamit nyo ay random forest ba yun?
Random forest classifier.
So bakit yun ang napili nyo na algorithm over other algorithms?
Yung unang classification namin sir is marami po kasing different literature in some parts of China, in some parts of Indonesia and India na nagsasabi na in all of the classification schemes or method na ginamit nila in their comparison, mas lumalabas na mas accurate yung random forest classifier over other things. So yun yung reason behind, although may availability of other classification method in Google Earth Engine, we adopted this because mas accurate naman din yung result. Although hindi din namin nagawa yung comparison of the different methods and applied it in the study sites na kinonsider namin.
Kasi ibang study na rin yun pag itetest nyo pa yung accuracy ng bawat algorithm. Doon naman sa part nung flood modeling. So 'di ba, sabi mo kanina meron kang 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020 na land cover. Tapos yung bawat time frame na yon ginagawa nyo ng flood model?
Yun lang hindi namin na-consider na we use it as a static na dataset wherein we use the 2020 na land cover dataset and parameterize it to produce the flood hazard map. Pero right now, we're actually doing a different research that accounts these changes in land cover and parameterize this dataset into the flood modeling methodology na ginagawa namin. Para ano lang, masilip lang namin kung ano yung epekto ng deforestation on flooding, ano yung epekto ng paglaki ng mga population on flooding events.
And then sa flood model naman, again, question ko to palagi sa sa lahat ng mga modeling studies. How do you test naman yung accuracy nung nagagawa niyo na flood model?
Normally sir, ginagawa namin yung validation is pinapakita namin sa tao yung dataset namin, and then at the same time we plot that on the flood hazard maps and then count kung ilang points yung tumama dun sa flood prone areas, and then i-count kung ilang points yung hindi tumama, and then magde-derive lang ng mga simple statistical analysis like descriptive ones kung gaano ka-accurate yung flood hazard maps. Pero alam ko yung mga seniors namin, meron din silang ibang other stuffs na ginagawa. Pero I don't know much about the details about how they did it. Sa Quezon City Drainage Master Plan, I guess, meron silang ganun na nag-interview sila, kinausap nila yung mga chairmans, nag-conduct sila ng focus group discussion just to derive the narrative of the accuracy of the flood.
Pero dito, hindi ka na part dun sa pag-validate nung flood model. Yung sa land cover part ka nung study, mas nag-focus.
Yeah.
Ayun. So ngayon naman, since alam na natin yung methodology, can you share naman yung results ng study?
Ayun. Kaka-review ko lang ng paper, I think yesterday. Nakita lang namin sir na, I mean nabanggit ko na ito kanina na mas lumiit po yung mga forest landscapes. And even before 1990, or sa first scene na kinonsider namin, sobrang liit na po talaga ng forest landscapes. And evidently, limited lang po sila dun sa matatarik and very high in elevation. So, we alluded na yung mga easily accessible forest landscape within this watershed were already deforested even before 1990. And then, gradually, nagde-decrease naman po talaga yung forest. Pero nalaman namin na yung decrease in the amount of forest focuses on easily accessible forest landscapes. Yung nasa mga foothills na mga mountains, yung mga isolated areas na nandun sa mga floodplain. And then, yung sa naman, yung sa built-up areas, nakita namin na rapidly nag-e-increase yung mga built-up areas, especially on urban conurbations. From 1990 up until 2020, nakita namin na I forgot the exact percentage, pero nag-grew siya by about 2,500 hectares by 2020. So, malaki pong malaking extent po yun. Pero yung problem na nakita namin, of that 2,500 hectares of expansion in 2020, roughly around 1,000 hectares were developed on naturally flood-prone areas when we intersected this on the flood hazard maps that we have. And in the context of landscape fragmentation, hinighlight lang namin yung forest landscapes talaga. So nakita namin na based on the results of the analysis, mas lumiit po yung mga landscapes that were considered as forests. Mas lumapad po yung mga perimeters nila. Sobrang naging irregular po yung mga shapes din nila. And then at the same time, yung density of edge relative sa total area is lumaki. Which means na nagiging mas isolated, nagiging mas maliit. And nagkakahiwalay-hiwalay po talaga yung forest landscape by 2020. So yun.
Anong ibig sabihin ng density ng edge?
Parang ano lang po siya sir. Yung equation kasi niya is you measure the length of the perimeter over the total area of the forest landscape. So kung mas malaki yung haba ng perimeter, mas ano siya, mas malapad po yung edge density niya. Mas malaki yung edge density niya.
Ulit-ulit, mas malaki yung...
Kung mas malaki po yung length po ng perimeter, tas ide-divide mo siya sa total land area, lalabas po na mas malapad po yung or mas negative yung landscape fragmentation po ng forest landscape na iyon.
So parang, kumbaga, kung ganito siya kalaki dati, mas kapag
Lumiit.
madaming edge, mas
Yeah.
napa-fragment siya, na
Yeah.
bibiyak-biyak siya.
Parang
Okay.
indicator lang po siya na calculation. Which indicates na yun nga, nagbibiyak-biyak na yung mga yung mga forest landscapes.
Pero dito sa study nyo, kasi 'di ba, you argue more dun sa pag-increase 'di ba ng built-in structures nyo at pagbaba nung mga forest lands
Yeah.
associated siya sa pagbaha. Paano mo siya ma-argue na dahil siya sa ganun at hindi sa climate change? Or how do you quantify yung effect ng climate change at yung effect nitong land cover change?
Yung sa method po kasi namin, sir, hindi namin finactor in yung conditions of, when we speak about this paper, hindi namin finactor in yung climate change. We only consider the baseline 100-year rain return period. So, yung process of knowing the exposure is also attributed on geoprocessing na nag-compile lang po kami ng different land covers and individually in-intersect namin siya dun sa flood hazard. So, we by doing this, mas ma-emphasize natin yung epekto talaga ng land cover change on the increasing flood exposure. Yun po yung separate ginawa naming methodological design just to make sure na hindi natin ma-attribute yung changes on the climate change, but instead we focus more on attributing these changes on the land cover change.
Sa bagay, magiging mas komplikado yung methodology kung ibibilang mo pa yung climate change. Kasi dapat may flood model ka dun sa 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020. Tama
Yeah.
ba? Tapos i-compare mo yun isa-isa.
And then you have to account the changes in the rainfall intensities. So aside from land cover, meron kang added layer on the amount of rainfall na pwedeng mag-fluctuate, either mag-increase or mag-decrease due to climate change.
Sabagay, at least ito mas simple at mas napo-point out nyo talaga yung effect ng land cover change.
Yeah.
Kasi siguro in relation lang din sa current events tungkol dito sa mga flooding. May nakita ba kayo mga ghost flood control projects dito or wala naman?
Nag-conduct po kami ng site visits on some portions of this watershed. And to our surprise, wala naman po kaming na-spot ng mga flood control. Pero I don't know if merong na-exist within this watershed.
And medyo mainit na topic yan, pero sige, mag-ano na tayo. Tawag nun, layo na tayo dun sa flood control.
Yeah.
So, ayun, I guess summarize ko lang yung napag-usapan namin so far. So, basically, meron kayong 30 years na land cover change. For that 30 years, meron kayong 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020. And then, kinompare nyo siya dun sa flood hazard. Tapos, nakita nyo na dumadami yung built-in structures, kumukonti yung forest, at ito yung pwede itong ma-associate dun sa mga pagbaha na nararanasan nila sa ano nga bang pangalan ng watershed?
Kinali A.
Nahirapan na. Kinali A watershed. So for anyone interested na basahin yung paper, please check nyo lang yung link sa description, at kung gusto nyo rin i-adapt yung methodology, pwede nyo rin sundan yung ginawa nila. So ngayon, punta naman natin siguro yung more on behind the scenes naman in doing this study. So, in this study, ano yung source of funding nito at saan ginagasto yung resources?
Yung project po kasi, sir, is yung principal investigators po talaga is yung UPLB INREM. Yung head po ng research center na yun is si Dr. Juan Pulhin. At naka-acquire po sila ng funding coming from the APN, yung Asia Pacific Network for Global Change Research based in Japan. And then ginamit namin yun to do this research.
Anong klaseng mga computers yung kinailangan nyo para magawa tong lahat ng land cover mapping and flood modeling?
Dito sa amin, sir, swerte na lang po kami kasi yung Google Earth Engine hindi siya ganun ka-extensive. I mean, hindi siya ganun ka nagre-require talaga ng sobrang tinding hardware requirements kasi nga naka-cloud po yung mga processes niya. So even with simple computers na naka-Ryzen lang, and then meron kang parang graphic processing unit na siguro mga 1050 na mga or 1080 I guess. Kayang-kaya niya niyang i-run yung classification process. Pero ang kailangan lang ata i-secure is more on the internet connection kasi kung mas mabagal po yung internet, hindi hindi ganoon ka-efficient yung processing and downloading time of the dataset, especially the classification process.
Dito natin mabibida yung mga gaming laptops at gaming
Yeah.
computers kasi may may GPU sila eh.
Pero yung sa mga flood hazard, yun yung magre-require talaga ng supercomputers. Kasi matagal siyang gawin, and then yung Kinali A kasi medyo malaki siya, so you have to subdivide it into different subcatchment. Then it took us siguro matagal siyang gawin kasi malaki siyang watershed.
So speaking of, ayan pala yung tagal. Gaano mo katagal ginawa yung land cover map? For example, yung 1990. Gaano mo siya katagal ginawa?
Sa akin kasi, sir, nang gumawa kami ng land cover change, hindi naman siya pag na-input mo yung lahat ng parameters and then right after that, yun na yung gagamitin mo. Dadaan pa siya pa sa different iterations kasi gagawin pa siya ng mga accuracy assessment, and if in the event na hindi siya pasok dun sa desired na accuracy na sinet mo, uulitin mo siya, and then magdadagdag po kayo ng mga different training points para mas ma-improve yung accuracy ng output. So in my case, tumagal po ata talaga siya ng mga 5 months just to complete it. Kasi uulit at uulit ka na ng processing. And then the validation part.
Ano yung desired accuracy mo dun sa sa mga land cover maps, no? 95%?
Sa akin po, sir, parang ad hoc decision ko siya na nakita ko lang din sa mga other papers na nabasa ko. Sinet ko siya as 90%. So if ever na hindi siya pasok dun sa 90, inuulit ko po yung classification process para mas makapag-produce ng mas maayos na out.
Paano yun pag 89.9? Tanggap mo yan or hindi?
Tanggap na ata. Round off na yun. Para hindi na uulit.
So dito sa sa study, in addition nga dun sa pinag-usapan natin na matagal gawin yung land cover mapping, kasi may gusto kang i-achieve na accuracy, ano pa yung mga matatawag mo na challenges in doing this study?
Challenges siguro, sir, yung pag-learn mismo ng software kung paano siya gagamitin. Kasi nga, nabanggit ko na yung educational qualification ko is environmental science. And meron akong courses related to computer science pero hindi ganun ka-extensive. So, I have to learn this. I have to spend time more just to overcome the steep learning curve of doing the coding stuff. So, yun yung pinaka nagiging that impedes me to do this study. Pero fortunately, na-overcome ko naman kasi meron din namang sobrang daming resources that you can access online just to learn these stuffs. Medyo medyo patient lang din to watch the videos, read the documentation, and read more on the application of this sa mga existing publications that use this kind of technology. Para masigurado mo din na what you've learned on YouTube or Facebook or other stuffs is naka-angkla din doon sa ginagawa ng mga scientists.
Dun sa pag-aaral nung programming language, malaking asset talaga ngayon yung
Yeah.
marunong ka mag-program kahit yung lang, mga basic codes, like kung paano yung mga pag-calculate per column, per row, mga ganun, yung paggawa ng loops. Gumagamit ka din ba ng AI para gawin itong mga codes mo sa Google Earth Engine?
Yeah. Nung una, medyo hesitant pa ako. Pero later on, na-realize ko na kung gagamit ka ng ChatGPT, mas efficient yung workload mo na kailangan mo lang ayusin yung instruction mo on what to do. And then you have to test it if it's producing the right result. And then, that's it. Mas efficient siyang way of dealing with the learning curve of this coding stuffs.
Nasabi ko to sa isang previous episode namin. Pero kung titingnan mo yung pag-aaral ng programming language ngayon kumpara 10-15 years ago,
Yeah.
mas madali siya ngayon dahil sa access sa mga large language models na yun, yung ChatGPT.
Yes, sir. Totally agree.
Kasi kahit ayun nga yung sabi ko kanina, gagawin mo lang yung basic code tapos ibibigay mo na yun kay ChatGPT tapos bigyan mo siya ng specific na instructions, yung complex na yung next step na complex processes na bigay mo sa kanyang instruction, nagagawa niya rin ng tama eh. Yan nga lang, kailangan mo nga lang i-double check kung tama talaga yung nagagawa niya.
Yeah. As long as maalam po kayo sa basic stuffs on how to use it, maalam din po kayo sa hinahandle yung data, posible talaga na ma-overcome yung pinaka impediments of integrating computer science and remote sensing.
So, yun lang yung i-advocate ko din na responsible na use ng AI sa panahon ngayon. Kasi alam naman natin ngayon, ginagamit din sa kasamaan yung mga AI technologies natin. So, yun, gamitin nyo ng maayos. At talagang makakatulong ito sa progression ng pag-aaral nyo at ng career nyo. So, dito, in doing this study, ano ang mga mako-consider mo na memorable na good and bad experiences in doing the study?
Siguro yung good, medyo nag-deviate po kasi ako sa remote sensing stuffs when I entered kasi yung ginagawa naming trabaho is more on the flood modeling. Parang good memories na nabigyan ako ng opportunity to do this remote sensing stuffs again. Na dinevelop ko siya in my masteral degree. Siguro yung bad memories lang is na sobrang dami kasing kailangan mong gawin just to accomplish this. You have to burn candles and spend your weekend on lab sa office, sa laboratory just to finish this. So yun lang yung bad memories ko. Pero apart from that, na-enjoy ko even yung mga long hours of traveling, pupunta magpe-present dun sa mga stakeholders and partners namin. Sobrang engaging at nakaka-enjoy na-appreciate ng mga stakeholders yung mga little things na ginagawa ng mga scientists. Kasi for me as a scientist, parang goal ko lang din naman na maibahagi ko yung learning ko just to improve the welfare of our constituents. So yun lang, very inspiring for me.
At dito, kailan nyo na-realize na sapat na yung nakuha nyong results to submit for publication?
Actually, hindi ko na-realize yung part na yun, sir. Na-realize ko lang na publication ready the moment na na-receive ko yung comment ng first reviewer. Kasi nakita ko yung mga butas na pwede pang ma-improve. And at the same time, nakita ko yung limitation na pwedeng gawin right after finishing this work. So, in terms of the amount of information, confident ako dun. Pero yun nga, na-realize ko right after the moment na natanggap ko yung feedbacks from the reviewers. And then work on those comments before publishing this sa version na ito na mababasa nyo online. Yan po.
Gaano katagal yung experience mo sa review process?
Yun medyo matagal din. Hindi ko lang maalala yung dates and then the exact month. Pero siguro nasa mga 4 months. Kasi may reviewer na mahirap yung pinapagawa niya. And then you have to accomplish this para matanggap siya for application. I mean for publication. Siguro mga 4 months din na trinabaho.
Tapos nung ni-revise mo, gaano mo siya katagal ginawa yung first revision dun sa paper?
First revision. Matagal din, sir. Kasi may mga nag-reproduce ako ng different data and then I have to prove something. So, nagbasa pa ako ng more articles just to complete the discussion part. Kasi yun yung may something na hinahanap about the limitation of the paper na gusto lang ipa-emphasize ng reviewer na merong ganitong kulang sa study and that future readers can build on this to improve the outcome of this research. Or parang ganun.
Ayun, so mag-iisang oras na rin tayo. Mag-wrap up na tayo. Ayun, so before we let you go, Ford, ano ang mga ma-advise mo sa mga aspiring researchers?
Ayun. Siguro share ko lang kasi part din po ako ng mga young researchers din na cohorts. Yung share ko lang na best practice siguro is hindi mapagod na magbasa ng mga research articles. Although meron naman din mga existing large language models like AI na you can easily chat and instruct them to summarize what's going on with this research. Pero mas mainam na alam mo yung direction ng research na ginagawa mo kasi that's the only way na malaman mo kung ano yung currently ginagawa and then ano pa yung dapat na gawin just to advance this discipline in the future. So yun lang. Magsipag-sipag lang din na magbasa on research articles. I know that it's tiring kasi mahaba and then hindi ganun ka friendly yung way of writing this kasi sobrang straightforward. It's very technical. Pero yun lang yung best way on young researchers like me that they have to do.
Tsaka siguro dagdag ko lang din, very common na hindi mo siya agad, may mga papers na hindi mo siya agad-agad maintindihan sa unang basa mo eh.
Yeah.
Kailangan mo siya ulit-ulitin
Yes,
basahin para maintindihan mo. At minsan, halimbawa, yung unang pagbasa mo ganitong araw, tapos yung babasahin mo siya ulit next week, parang may mas nagets ako ng konti. Tapos pagka next week naman, babasahin mo siya ulit, parang nadagdagan yung, so yun, very common na paulit-ulit mong babasahin minsan yung mga kahit isang paper lang yan. Tapos dun sa yung pagbabasa with AI, yung isa ko ding napansin, yung mga Elsevier publications, pag pinuntahan mo yung website nila, may naka-built-in na dun na AI na magpa-prompt sa'yo kung may tanong ka dun sa article.
Oo nga din.
So siguro lang, for supplementary lang yun. For assistance lang sa reading, basahin nyo pa rin talaga yung full paper kasi hindi mo rin masisiguro yung accuracy ng AI, baka may kung ano-anong masasabi na mali.
Yeah, may limitations din siguro. Although di ko din alam kung at what extent gaano ka-accurate yung mga nilalabas nilang
Tsaka maganda din magbasa kayo ng magbasa para nakaka-pick up din kayo ng ways on how to write. Kasi para makapagsulat kayo, kailangan nyo ring may mabasa din na madaming papers.
Oo nga. Swerte nga lang din ako, sir, kasi ever since talaga as a child, medyo nakadevelop talaga ako ng good reading habit. Kaya hindi talaga ako madaling mapagod when reading these long articles. So yun lang, may develop lang din ng good reading habits.
Ay, so speaking about that, ano yung mga tips mo on how to efficiently read or hindi agad-agad mapagod kapag nagbabasa ng mga scientific papers?
Ako nabasa ko lang to sa LinkedIn, pero I think it's very applicable sa pag-skim and pag-filter out ng mga journals na pwede niyong basahin at i-consider for your literature reading is basahin niyo yung abstract, sunod is basahin niyo yung conclusion. Then right after that, you read the ending statement of the introduction. And then you have to read some portions of the result na gusto nyong basahin. Parang ganun lang. Skip nyo na muna yung method kasi usually dun yung mga technical stuffs talaga eh.
Agree. Yan din ginagawa ko. Ayun. So, last question. Do you have anything to promote?
Wala po, sir. Follow nyo na lang po yung page namin na UP Resilience Institute. Active po kami sa Facebook and then active din po kami in other platforms. Yan lang po.
Ayun. So, I guess hanggang dito na lang muna tayo. Maraming salamat kay Ford sa pagpapunlak ng aming imbitasyon.
Thank you po.
At maraming salamat sa lahat ng nakinig at nanood. See you everyone next week. Madami pa tayong pag-uusapan na research na ginagawa ng ating mga Pinoy scientists.
The opinions of podcast creators, hosts, and guests are not necessarily reflective of the official stance of the Pod Network Entertainment, its hosts, or other network programs. The content created by the people behind the podcast is personal and not meant to harm any religion, ethnicity, group, organization, company, or individual.